Prepare your party of players and polyhedral dice. Your tragic backstory better be worth the sacrifice. Seize your sheets and D20. Let's play D&D. Your haggard character swaggers with daggers in each hand. You've all discussed what you must, but even best lay plans. Take a turn when checks are missed.
Roll initiative. Brandish your blades. Don't fail your saves. No risk too great, no choice too bold. This is your story. No guts, no glory. Confront your fate with every roll. Every roll.
Rises inside, one who will pay the price. Their chance of success will rest upon the dice. No risk too great, no choice too bold.
This is no small rolls.
Hello, Crumpets, and welcome to this very special Deacon Debrief episode of No Small Rolls, where we're going to discuss all things gruesome, all things adventurous, and all things buttons. I'm joined tonight by David Knight, our one and only DM extraordinaire, and our one and only Deacon extraordinaire, Sarah Gain.
Hi.
Hello, both.
Hi.
Mini debrief for a mini series.
Absolutely. This is going to be a 4-part debrief. That's going to be 8 hours.
We'll die 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fall off various things, make terrible decisions. It's all fine.
I hope you're not attached to any of your parts. That sounds really creepy.
It's fine. I feel like creepy is the vibe that we're in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. There will be ominous music playing under this.
Bad vibes.
Of course.
Bad vibes.
Bad vibes. So tonight we are going to discuss all things Deacon related for our 4-part mini-series. So it goes without saying that there's going to be spoilers aplenty. So if you've not caught up with the 4-part mini-series, go and do that now. And here is your spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Right, okay, now you're all caught up if you weren't already. Let's dive into the chat. So let's start the discussion with horror in general. Were you both, were all of us, are we horror fans? What are our feelings about horror in general as a genre?
Absolutely not.
No way, I don't believe that.
I mean, no, I don't. There are certain horrors that I just cannot cope with.
Fair.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, there are some things that you go, a jump scare or two, that's fine. But other things, no. Horror in general isn't my go-to, hilariously enough.
Yeah.
Amazing. Sarah?
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of a half and half feeling on horror, actually, because I do enjoy certain horror movies. I prefer things that are more like Scream, that are going to make you jump there. I quite like the gory side, but I also like to laugh. Something that's like a straight out horror as a film, I'm a bit like, but I do kind of like the live action scare things. I love things like that. I love to be made to jump. I think there's something really fun about that.
Like a ride, or when you go to
Scare mazes and things.
Like scare mazes, exactly that.
Yes.
Exactly that. And I've directed a couple of those in the past, and they're so much fun, making other people wet their pants. But I also like going through them when I don't know what's happening, and sort of seeing what they can do to try and scare me. I really enjoy that side of it. So yeah, I think that's my real excitement with horror, rather than kind of sitting down and going, come on then, let's watch The Grudge or something. That doesn't necessarily. I've tried to watch one of the Annabelle films, and actually it wasn't that I was really frightened by it and didn't enjoy it. It was more the fact I was like, I can see through some of this, and that's not as much fun. When they're really thoughtful horrors, then yeah, I really like them. But actually, yeah, blood and guts and gore, I'm there for that. Which is a good job, given the way that our story went.
Yeah. It's really funny that you bring up scare mazes, because that's how Vicky and I met. We were
Yes,
both working
yes.
in a scare maze.
Yes.
And,
Yes, you
it's-
were.
I tell you what, it's much easier being the scarer than it is being the person being scared.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Ben? What's your horror
yeah.
vibe?
I'm with you both. I'm not great with horror. Like certainly not like proper horror. I can't stop. Like even something low key, freaky like Signs or those kind of films. Even those, I'm like, I get freaked out by them. Like if I'm especially if you're doing the full horror film thing of watching in the dark late at night, all of that sort of side of things, then I find I think I just find it really intense at times, and I have to sort of walk away for a bit if I'm watching something like that. Like I remember even now, massive spoiler alert for Game of Thrones, so I'll be careful what I say here. But the sort of undeady elements of that in a couple of big fights, especially in the final season, cough cough, massive spoilers. But there's huge kind of like undeady fights, and even that sometimes, like I remember watching one of the episodes in the final season like in a dark room by myself and finding it so intense at times. I was like, I'm just going to pause this now for 10 minutes and like
To be fair,
sort of walk around the room.
If it's the episode I think you're talking about, you probably needed to watch that in a dark room.
Oh, that's why I was watching it in the dark room, because it was physically impossible to see it
if you were in
if there was
sunlight.
any light. You could not watch that episode in the day. Even with the curtain shut, there was too much spill from like underneath the curtains. It was so just physically dark that it was impossible.
Do either of you have like a favorite horror movie? Like something that, like Sarah, did you say Scream?
Yeah, the Scream franchise, Scream 2 to me, I always thought was absolutely brilliant. It just was such a nice, I love that kind of nod to what being a little bit self-referential, understanding what the horror genre was. The body count had gone right up. You genuinely weren't sure what was going on. There was nice little trickles and teasers of things, and when things got really intense, they genuinely were sort of the sort of moments. Like there's one where they're in the sound booth, and so she's trying to bang to stop it from happening and to try to tell someone what's going on, and literally the other person's just like la 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 because they can't hear. And it's lovely moments like that you're just sat there as the audience going, oh God! But
Only you could communicate.
yeah, that would probably be my favourite. I think because it's I think I like the story element of it as well as the horror stuff. But yeah. What about you guys? What's yours?
Oh.
If you had to pick.
Oh. I mean, if I had to pick something that would terrify me, like if I genuinely wanted to be scared, and again, Sarah, you've already mentioned it, it's The Grudge. I don't know what it is about the Grudge setup. Like, maybe it's partly that noise that the ghost makes. Cannot deal with that. Also, I watched that when I was perhaps a little bit too young for the first time. And then there's this whole thing where, she grabs people from, like someone looks in a cupboard and like she gets pulled up into the attic. And at the same time, the attic hatch in our house, as me as a young little teenager, the attic hatch in our house was at the top of the stairs, and we'd lost the door to the attic hatch had been broken. So I basically had to walk under an open black hole to get to bed every night. Terrifying.
Yeah. That's not going to go well as an adult, but as a kid, you're going to be like,
Exactly.
Imagination override. Yeah.
So if I want to be scared, it's the Grudge series.
Then,
I
mean, given you said you're a little bit perturbed by Signs, I'm expecting this to be quite gentle.
Yeah, the one.
It's the Grinch.
Noddy's first horror. It was a long time ago I watched Signs, to be fair. But I suppose not that long ago, because it's not that old a film. Is Shaun of the Dead a horror? Do we count that?
Yes, definitely.
That's
horror
probably
comedy,
like my
right?
favourite horror.
Yeah.
Like it's a horror comedy,
horror
but if we're going
comedy.
for like my favourite horrors, that's more my sort of style. Is like, let's get some laughs in there as well. A lot of laughs, obviously, if it's Shaun of the Dead. Otherwise, I mean, Scream is a classic, and I feel like like you, Sarah, like I watched it probably when I was probably far below the age that you're meant to be watching it. I think that night that I watched it, which was at a friend's birthday party when I was at school, we also then, is it Species might have also watched that same night, which was like,
I know what you're talking about. I've not seen it.
Like, yeah, and that was properly like, oh, okay. Whereas Scream was like, haha, this is silly.
Yeah.
And then we watched, like, I think it was Species. And then, yeah, we were then freaked out for the rest of the night about any noises because we were having a sleepover, you know.
Yeah.
And there was like a French window in the room that we were sleeping in, French doors. And every time it like creaked, it was like,
Actually, it's funny you said about things that have scared you as a child, because something I would throw into the mix is probably Stephen King's It. And I remember watching the first one when I was quite young and being really scared of it until the ridiculous spider turns up at the end and you're like, what is that? And suddenly it's not scary at all. And all of the things they've set up are just gone. And being really scared of Pennywise the clown. And then a couple of Halloweens ago, sitting down after the new one had been released, which I really enjoyed. I really liked the new It. And watching the old one then after that going, this isn't scary at all. There's nothing about this that's scary. There's just he's got slightly sharp teeth. That's about all that's worrying about this. It was so strange but it's sort of, tastes change, don't they? And what we kind of find scary. But I think the It side, so there's been some very, very, very bad Stephen King adaptations over the years, but I think the It one has done really well, and I think there's something beautifully creepy about that, because clowns, innit? I don't mind clowns either way, but there's something wonderful about them in a horror film that just makes you go, oh no.
They can be turned creepy so easily, like, so quickly.
Hello. I'm Grace Kelly Miller, and I played Gary Braithwaite, or Gary Baldy, in the gruesome adventures of Deacon Fireheart Buttons. So, hello. I would say yes, I am a fan of the horror genre, but I don't watch them very often because I get a bit scared when I'm watching things by myself. So I need to watch them with people, and usually in a sleepover situation, so that if I have a nightmare, there's someone there and I'm not going to get too freaked out. I get into my head, like, going to the bathroom to brush my teeth and wash my face, all that sort of thing. I need somebody to come with me, because otherwise, like, when I'm washing my face and I'm like about to look up, I'm like, oh, there's going to be someone behind me. So I get freaked out like that. I would say my favorite type of horror is zombie films. I love a zombie film, probably because there's a lot of humor in zombie films. But I also like the gore, and they just seem so kind of distant from, like, kind of the more psychological horrors. So it feels safer to watch, I think. And I love practical effects. So I really like being able to see, like, really cool makeup effects, and that is often what you get with zombie films. So I really like that. Brain Dead is one of my favorite films, mostly because of the practical effects. I just think it's really fucking cool. But I did recently, within like the last year, finally start watching the Scream movies. Now, when I was younger, that was when all the scary movie parodies were coming out. And I watched those, but I'd never actually seen Scream. So seeing that recently, I realised how much humour were in those films as well. And I just think that they're brilliant. Really well done, really well told. It's just great. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the more recent ones as well, still working my way through those.
So following up on that, David, so why did you want to create the follow-up to Deacon's previous adventure as a horror?
Oh, well, that's a really good question.
He's obviously the character for it.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. George, you know what? Like, that's kind of what I loved about it. I did want to do a little horror mini-series, just because I think, like, at the time in the main campaign, we weren't anywhere near anything even remotely gruesome or shocking or anything like that.
Busy sorting out spoons and
exactly. It was quite like it was such a fun time wandering around Forlost Vale. So I just like wanted to like hit on like a different vibe, but also then what I loved is that Deacon is like the least worried character in so many aspects of his life. He knows what he wants. And he knows where he's going, like, as long as he's got his compass. Mm-hmm. And so I really enjoyed, as I was planning it, like the image of put this happy-go-lucky little guy in the worst horrible situation and just to see what would happen, you know?
Poor Deacon.
Poor Deacon. And to be fair to him, I feel like even by the end, as he was one exhaustion throw away from death, he
couldn't even move anymore.
He didn't move. He still had a positive attitude.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, all things considered, it was relatively positive. I think anyone else would have been broken by that point because everyone else pretty much was, but Deacon was still trying. It's like, wow. Well, bless you, mate. Still trying to barter, still trying to see that there could be a way out of it. I'm like, me as a person, I'm just like, just give up. Bless him. But there's so many moments listening back, especially kind of noticing that if those things had happened to pretty much any other character, I think that out there, they would have never handled it that way. And so simple ones like, oh, you see a face in the dark. Hiya, love. Doesn't warn anyone, doesn't think I could be in danger, just says hello to something in the dark, knowing that there could be danger, but he doesn't think of it that way. Yeah. And that's what I love about Deacon. That's what makes it funny. But yeah, I think it juxtaposes against the horror, doesn't it?
Exactly.
To have someone like that.
Like his whole like, I feel like I keep using the word vibe, but yeah. His whole thing, like, doesn't naturally gel with horror, which is kind of what made it a perfect fit.
Yeah.
It was like see what's like that kind of character would do in a truly horrific situation. And like you say, he tries to help. He tries to fix things. He tries to set things right and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you sort of approach going in, like knowing you were going into a horror with this character, Sarah, that you played like before in the main campaign in a very sort of very different time and space?
I think actually I tried not to think about it too much for exactly that reason, because Deacon doesn't think forward. And I kind of wanted to be very conscious that me as Sarah, knowing about the horror, didn't put that into him, because he wouldn't assume it's that, when we were playing it, all that music wasn't there. So he doesn't hear the ominous music. He doesn't know what's coming. So he just goes into it as he sees. So I suppose it was kind of just making sure that kind of truthful side of Deacon stayed there. And because, it was always going to have that nice balance with it. But it was hard at times.
Maintaining that relentless positivity.
Yeah.
That's a really good point about the music, though, actually, because for the first 2 episodes, to give a rounder description of how this recording was set up. So we all went away for a whole weekend, right?
We had a lovely weekend away.
Yeah, a lovely weekend away. Like, hired an Airbnb and basically spent Saturday and Sunday just recording and playing in person with some lovely equipment that we've managed to get because of our patrons. So thank you so much, patrons. And for the first 2 episodes on the Saturday, we didn't have any music or anything. But what was really interesting is that on the Sunday, on the episodes 3 and 4, Ben, you very cleverly managed to figure out that we could have like generic music playing into our headphones that wasn't added into the recording. And the tone shift for everybody, just having some like creepy strings and some plinky plonky piano in the background was massive.
I totally forgot that had happened.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
My
So
goodness.
I went online and essentially found like 2 hours of like loopable, as you say, like sort of, I think one was just out and out piano, wasn't it? And the other one was kind of like strings and the kind of the full works, but sort of
the horror
fairly
ambience.
generic, creepy noise sort of music-y sort of thing. And it just, at moments, it fitted so well with what was happening. Like, it was sort of uncanny at times where there's just like little like silences or like builds at sort of dramatic moments. And you're right, it had a real sort of noticeable, palpable effect, I think.
I wonder
when it began and you're playing with it.
Yeah, I wonder as well, because like before I listened back to the series and just thinking about what we'd done, which is obviously now quite a few months ago, the bits that had stuck in my head were things like the corridor with the barbed wires, the cages, and stuff like that.
Forgotten about the barbed wire.
Yeah, no.
When I got to that, I remembered the sort of the end, but the sort of how we got there, I was like, I've forgotten this entirely.
Yeah, there was a few bits that I'd forgotten about, the library and with the shepherd and all of that kind of stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, we go down. Oh, and sort of what happened when we dropped off the rope bridge and stuff like that. Those little bits were just kind of missing. But yeah, I wonder if some of the connections to the memory maybe sit possibly with that music. But I just, how funny. I don't remember the music being there at all. But yeah, you saying about Deacon's exhaustion, obviously I had the most unlucky rolls because every time I got to roll for exhaustion, I got it. I was like,
got it.
Goodness sake, come on. Yeah. But it was just so funny because the other thing I really noticed is that me as a player, because we played so much in one go, I was genuinely getting tired as well. Yeah. So I start the first episode and it's like Deacon's full of ideas, he's coming out with stuff. And I was like, and listening back to it, I was thinking, wow, how did Deacon come up with all these suggestions? Because I totally don't have them, but listening back to it was amazing. And then I noticed, I think by about episode 3, suddenly Deacon had gone very, very quiet and wasn't really saying much for a while.
He'd been through a lot by that point,
hadn't he? He'd been through a lot. Yeah. And I think my brain was just so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. It was like, I'm just going to sit and listen to the story for a bit. Like, not a conscious decision, but I know that's what my head was going, you need some time out. Yeah. So yeah, and you can hear it in my voice. I get another level of exhaustion. I'm like, okay, well, that probably works quite well, to be honest. Okay,
that matches both player and character in this moment.
I guess that's the fun of having like the big sort of group setups, is that there is the little opportunity if you need to just take a little step back at some points. That people will jump up and fill in.
I love the full. Just as a DM, I love those full episodes when I can sit back and just let players chat. That's when I get it. I don't necessarily get it moment to moment. I get it for a full episode at a time. I'm like, this is a character chat episode. Off you go, everybody.
We're just going to sit by a campfire and
see what happens.
A bit different in this one, David. You were really having to like drive plot and events and stuff happening forward all the time.
Actually, in a peek behind the screen, there were some really interesting moments. There was a moment in the first episode. Again, I don't know if you remember this. I had almost like a mini panic. It was edited out. Thank you, Pippa, for not embarrassing me.
Thank you, Pippa, for editing all
Thank you,
four
Pippa,
of
for
them.
editing everything. Yeah, fantastic.
Amazing.
Deacon, Sarah, you were doing a brilliant job of being Deacon, trying to fix the situation and bounce between the guards and the smugglers. Yeah. And it got to the point that you were like, I'm going to go back to the guards. And I just had to, I did. Again, it's edited out. I'd be like, just so you know, the adventure is underground, everybody. Can we just... I just need to check with you, Sarah, that like what the plan is to eventually get under there, because otherwise I got nothing. Nothing.
Which was the plan, but it was kind of...
it's so true to Deacon to like bring everybody together and just be like, okay, how are we all fixing? Like, how are we going
to fix this?
Yeah.
But that was it as well. I was just like, I came up with all these sort of like diplomatic, placatory resolves, and I was like, how did I come up with that? But it kind of suited the situation and where we were going to go, and
and then the other moment that I had was in the 4th episode. I think that is still in there, when you were all stuck in a cage where your only option is to crawl forwards and you all stop and heal yourselves, and I'm just like, guys, there's no point.
Literally no point.
We're like half an hour off the end of the whole series. You're gonna die. This is a horror series. I have to kill somebody.
I know.
Come on.
But some people escaped.
They did.
That's true.
2. Well, possibly 3, but probably not.
Yeah, probably 2.
Probably 2.
Poor Eloise is probably still stuck down there.
Probably still there. Do you know the one thing I did notice though on listening back, and I probably noticed it at the time as well, that I think I feel like, even though it wasn't said in the story, obviously, because it's just what's happening, but obviously the title of the little miniseries is Deacon's series. And
Yeah.
the amount of times people go, "How are you looking, Deacon? Do you need some more stuff?" And I'm just like, if this is a main campaign, that would never happen. Like, they therefore,
Like,
does
look
everybody look
after the
okay?
guest.
Exactly. Deacon's got to make it to the end because it's literally got his name on it. He got to get
Yes.
to the end.
I think it was definitely in my head. I don't know if it was in the heads of all the rest of the
You can
players, but
tell
like
it
definitely
is.
in my head, it was like, if anyone survives this, please
to
let it
be
be Deacon. Like, we've all come in, like, we've made characters. I mean, again, peek behind the curtain, like David had, said to all of us before, is like, you make a character each, but they don't get attached to them. 'cause
Don't.
They're gonna die.
The plan is to go hard. Yeah.
Yeah. We were all coming in with not disposable characters, because I think we all got attached to our
Yeah.
characters, of course,
Really
especially
interesting characters. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Really
and
interesting.
you come in with very little. Like, again, like, peek behind the curtain. I didn't have much for Thorn when I came in, other than like I was sort of experimenting with like, what does he sound like? About half an hour before we started.
Well, that is an interesting thing, because you hadn't even decided if you were going to be on the guard side of things or
No.
the smuggler side of things for that first episode,
Mm.
and then weirdly ended up being on both.
On both,
Yeah,
yeah.
you were.
And that sort of, some of that came from a chat. I think, like, we paused the recording at one point. I think, I feel like Vicky had to go and meet a friend to pick up something. Anyway, we paused the recording for a minute. And, like, I think that was when the little discussion between me and Vicky happened of, like, how about the two characters? They know each other already. Like, and we're like, okay, yeah, they know each other. They work together. And it's like, okay, cool. Right. So what's that say about Thorn? Okay, so he works for the guard, but he also works for the smugglers.
Yeah.
It's like, and just straight away, like, you start building depth and like history and all of that, like, from going like, I don't know,
Here's the thing, I'm going to latch onto that, and that's a new part of the character, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and then inevitably over the course of 4 episodes, you of course become like hugely attached to all of these characters.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And then when horrible things happen to them, it's sad.
Gary
It's
Baldy.
very sad. I found it really sad.
It was the crumbling like a Garibaldi biscuit. I absolutely I lost it. I was listening to that. I was like, oh. And I have to say, and Thorn as well at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously not funny. That was so moving. I was like, wow. Oh,
Yeah,
I know it's supposed to be
I remembered-
horror, but
Yeah, there was one thing that I wanted to include in that end, and I think I said about it off mic afterwards, and it didn't make it on mic, is that, like, I would have loved him to have also, like, had a little, I don't think it's on mic, like a little, like, one of the final scents at the end when he's making all the scents and going back to the Feywild, is also that, like, there's a bit of the captain's, like, birthday cake smell there as well. Just a little, like, little nod back to that.
Oh,
But,
that would have been cute.
yeah, these things that you think of afterwards. And then when
After.
I came back to listening back to it, I was like, I thought I said about the cake. Oh, okay. Apparently that was in my head, not on the microphone.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's so funny because from what I remembered, I thought we knew more about Eloise and that she definitely was stuck and trapped, and that was it. Game over. Whereas it was kind of left much more open. And this is terrible, but when it got to the end, I was like, oh, Gail's still alive. I thought Deacon was the only one that survived. I was like, maybe that's just how I felt at the time. So, large spoilers there, but-
Gail's there too.
Yeah,
Or at
Gail's
least she
there
is for now.
too. Yeah.
I kind of have the image of, like, so the shepherd and Deacon being led off, all of these creatures, and, like, Gale just being, like, a person in the crowd that's just stood there whilst all of these horrors are, like, passing by her.
Exactly that.
Eloise in a cage screaming in the background somewhere. But
Cool.
I mean, that does lead into the question of what was going on with Eloise.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think Sam wanted to ask a question about this, superfan Sam, for you. Well, for Daryl, but maybe we can ask you, David. So Sam said he was really intrigued by the associates. Is this something that you had previously planned as canon, or just a juicy little extra bit of lore of Daryl's own making?
Yeah, so I can answer a part of this. Daryl is a fantastic player at it, almost in opposite to how you came in with Thorn, like with very little. Daryl came in with, here is my backstory, here is a whole load of lore.
It's a 16-page novel.
It wasn't. I think it was only 1 page this time.
Wow, so restrained.
No. No, genuinely,
He's
like
not here to defend himself.
he
I'm
always
sorry,
comes
Daryl.
with like a connection to the wider world, or like
Yeah.
a new piece like of the puzzle. Like he just fills that tapestry. It's fantastic. And so his idea was that he wanted to play a character who was in very many ways against the warrior, against Silith Valia, Deacon's like hero. And so we had a brief discussion, and the associates, this duelists guild, basically their whole thing, or like, you know, beyond being like an assassin's guild for hire and that kind of that jive, they were established as a counterpoint to Silith Valia and his followers, and they are like in a bitter rivalry.
That's
Throughout
why-
time.
With Silith
That's why I wanted the compass.
Exactly that. So basically, like, and whilst it didn't like fully come out, like he'd been kind of sent to the area because the associates keep a tabs on anyone who's mentioning the warrior and mentioning Silith Valia, which of course Deacon had done in his guest spots in the main campaign. So that word had gotten back to the associates, and like they'd sent out Eloise as a like, someone's going to be crossing at some point. Someone is in the area, we're assuming. Take them out.
Oh, take them out.
Find them, confront them.
So was Eloise planning on confronting or taking out Deacon?
That was my understanding of it, yeah. So Eloise the whole time, I think, never helps Deacon in any way.
No, she doesn't.
Wants to see the compass, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
and like
I
there
remember
was
the
a whole
moment where-
suspicion. Suddenly, the whole table became very suspicious of Eloise's motives.
Yeah. It was.
I mean, we were generally quite suspicious of Eloise at points in that, undoubtedly.
In general.
But I never put two and two together on that one. Like,
Well, it's the only time you hear Deacon actually get pretty serious is that moment.
Yeah.
He just says, "You can hold my hand, you do
You can hold
anything,
my hand with it under."
I kill you." Are we clear? Crystal, good.
Yeah.
Let's carry on. So, yeah, that's interesting. And do you know what? It's one of those things that I did wonder afterwards. I was like, we probably would have dug further into it were we not in the depths of a horror episode where it just wasn't the right time to start going, so tell me, why are you interested in my compass? And I was like, there's kind of a scary dude who's trying to kill us all, so shall we move on?
Plus, Eloise very much lost the use of an entire leg. So she was kind of like, well, I'm literally on the back foot here.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, yeah, getting her leg trapped under the rocks, like listening back. Oh,
Yeah.
David, listening back to so much of it, it's just so like, oh.
It's when you listen back and you make the same noises that you did at the time and going, at the same time you did it on the recording.
Isn't it such like an out of body experience listening to yourself back?
Yeah.
Making those same jokes and noises and stuff, and you're going, I'm saying it on recording and in my head.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah.
It's so weird, isn't it? At times, that weird, uncanny thing that you remember bits and you don't remember bits, and that half sort of because it was quite a long time, and because Pippa had edited all these episodes, whereas usually, like, I've usually edited some of the episodes, or Grace's episode, like, I've been more involved in the edits and all of that. And this time, I was in America while Pippa was working their magic on them, and so the first time I heard most of them was the finished thing with the music 9 months after we recorded it, was it? Or give or take?
Beginning of September.
Beginning of September.
Yeah.
So you're in a weird sort of headspace where it's become like a slightly distant but sort of weirdly vivid sort of memory, and it's such a fascinating place to then be, as you say, listening back to it and then being like, oh, I hope someone does. Oh, I do. Yeah, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. The weird one is things like I'd completely forgotten about Mopsy. Completely forgotten about the dog.
Mopsy.
Yeah.
Which is obviously...
Mopsy doesn't last very long.
No, I suppose not. But at the same
Start
time...
of episode 2, is it?
Yeah. Is it even that? It's the beginning of episode
The
2.
big creature thing, isn't it?
I was thinking that was episode 1, but it starts in episode 1 and then it ends very abruptly.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Poor Mopsy.
Poor
Mopsy too.
Mopsy.
It's okay.
Mopsy too.
Mopsy isn't a real dog.
Yes.
Not a real dog. It's a reindeer
Not a real dog.
animal.
It's all fine.
While we're on questions from Sam, Sam also had a question for you, David. Why the drills? Why did it have to be drills? Never going to get that out of my head now. And I guess neither will Thorn. Thanks, Sam.
Oh, that's a good one. So the drills came from, knowing that like we'd set out to make a little horror miniseries. I watched a number of horror films, all of which had a kind of like folklore kind of vibe to them to kind of fit in. And one of them is a film called Apostle with Dan Stevens
From Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he plays
Beauty
a
and
guy.
the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast is probably a nicer yeah. But in this, it's sort of slightly period set, and he goes to a remote island looking for his sister, I believe. They're a fairly religious group of islanders that live there, and they've got lots of like folklore beliefs that they all abide to. But spoiler for that film, there is a moment in which, as punishment, somebody who has helped him gets a drill to the head, like is strapped to a table, and they drill in as like a purification kind of a thing. He sinned, and therefore, and it made me cringe so much. I knew it had to go in. I was like, well, yeah. That's it. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Something that has made me cringe and like react physically.
Yeah.
So it had to go in. That, and obviously I was going with a whole like, experimentation, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I love that part of the storyline. I thought it was such a clever idea.
Yeah.
In a kind of way.
Yeah. So the idea was, rather than just puncture Thorn with needles, or to be honest, it might not have been Thorn. Thorn was just the character who decided to split from the group.
Yeah,
Never
Thorn
split from the
decided
group
to
in a horror
teleport
film.
out of the cage.
Yeah. So he was the chap that got it, unfortunately. Yeah, so it was little medical drills in, and then pumping the liquid to make you mutate.
Grim.
Which is a point, actually. Speaking of liquid that makes you mutate, there was like a whole thing that just didn't come up.
Uh-huh.
So as you guys were exploring the workshop, but like the shepherd's abode with all of the different rooms, you ended up in the library, but you could have ended up in an alchemical laboratory.
Oh.
Like if you'd gone through one of the other
Orin
doors.
would have loved it.
What would you have done?
Probably not.
Yeah. Which was basically full of what looked like nice, healthy healing potions. But if you drank them, you would have like then slowly mutated over the course of the rest of the series. Yeah. So like everything that happened to Garibaldi in like those split seconds, because he was like just being filled with this liquid.
When his like arms fell off.
His arms fell off and all the rest of it.
Crawled away.
And like, and I was kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of why I forced it all on Garibaldi. Like I keep calling Garibaldi. Poor Gary at the end. Was that I was just like, I've made this really horrific thing. I need to put it in here somehow.
I want to use it.
Yeah.
You haven't made it so no one experiences this.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
So what would have happened to people, David?
Well, so I've got like it's a 3-stage process, and it's a D8's worth of stuff each time. Like this little table. Actually, what I'll do is I will post it up on the Patreon. The Patreon to show just like blah. But rather than explaining all of it, could you two just roll a D8 and see what happens?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
delightful.
okay.
Can I? Oh no.
Just once to start with, yeah?
Just we'll see your first stage first.
Here we go. I've got my dice, which are in a very appropriate for this, I feel, lab dice test tube.
Oh,
This
yeah.
feels
I got
this
a
feels perfect
2.
for this.
A 2. So your stomach begins to ache.
Oh.
Okay.
Pretty minor.
I've got a 3.
3. So your heart starts to race and won't slow down.
Okay, understandable given the horror
Yeah,
set.
horror, exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty like it's just a little bit of the. So roll again for your second stage.
Okay.
7.
7. Pus-filled boils cover your body.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
I rolled a 2.
2. You vomit up maggots.
Oh.
Yeah. Again,
Oh.
I went creepy.
Are they living or dead?
Great question. Who's to say? And then for the final stage that would basically kill you, give us another roll.
Oh, hang on. That didn't work. 3.
Oh.
A 3. Your chest explodes and your organs fall out.
I like that.
Wow.
That's my kind of death. I like that.
An 8 for me.
An 8. Oh, so that's what Gary had. Your body collapses into multiple parts, sprouts legs, beetle wings, and escape.
That's amazing. I love that.
Oh,
It's so good. Isn't it funny that it's like the mid-range bit almost is the one that makes you go, oh,
God.
Yeah.
because there's something almost imaginable, but you can't kind of put anything to, you fall apart and every bit of you walks off or your chest explodes.
That's
There's
like
kind of-
into
it's
full fantasy at that point. yeah.
Exactly. And I think that, it's that's the kind of horror. I think that's why I like it, because it's fantasy. There's no connection to that, but you can vomit up maggots and you go, oh God.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, that is so good. Of course you decided that. Of course you did. This is what, I mean, in a nicer side of that was my, one of my reasons for wanting to be a wild magic barbarian in the first place with Deacon was to have that kind of not knowing what was happening. And my biggest regret of the series was that I had my cloak with me the whole time and I forgot about it until it got ripped off me, and I was like, I've got a cloak that's got loads of patches that can do stuff, and I just wish
you used a couple of patches, didn't you?
I used one and
patch.
Right at the end, and that was it.
Yeah.
I just used the one, and I mean, it gave me a healing potion, which
Very useful. Yeah.
actually did turn out to be quite useful. But yeah,
Whatever David says about healing.
Yeah, whatever. But
Hey, if it meant that Deacon survived, it's all right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. That was the aim.
That was the aim. But yeah, it would have been nice to just chuck in a few other little moments. And I was like, oh, there's a few moments actually where I could have pulled something off of that, and it would have been funny to see what happened and what that might have changed. But I think half the time as well, I was just like, I've got so many choices. I need to think of something. What am I doing? So yeah, that was probably the only thing that's a shame, because I like that. I like the idea of not knowing, and like you say, David, you just go, roll this dice and see what happens.
See what happens. Here's a whole bunch of things that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Which obviously is not the main basis of D&D, but I think there's something nice about you feeling out of control at something that's supposed to be within your control. That's the bit that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're looking at everybody else has got a nice clean feature of, I like use an action, I do this.
Yeah.
And like going, okay, I use an action and I don't know what happens.
I have no idea what happened. I mean, the fact that it was like, okay, I'm gonna rage. Okay, everybody, I'm growing flowers. This is really unhelpful. It was literally the worst thing I could have done. I was like, great. Oh well, everywhere's pretty, so that's nice.
Yeah.
I do love that. Yeah, that wild magic barbarian, and it's like the same. There's a wild magic sorcerer as well, isn't there? And like they're just fun things to play with. Like introducing that element of chaos. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, big fan. Right. Shall we end with any favorite moments from the series?
Oh my goodness, that's an amazing question. Ooh. As Deacon or as Sarah?
Both. If they're different, let's do both.
From looking at it from my perspective as a player, I think I just really enjoyed those moments where the jeopardy really got a lot. So a couple of them would actually be the key moments of things like when the bridge, when we were all on that and we were all trying to not fall in the hole, which of course inevitably we all did. But that sort of rise of anticipation to how that was going to get sorted, and the shepherd turning up, and then the same thing with the room with the barbed wires, and there was no choice. We couldn't get out of that. So I think as a player, they were my favourite moments. I don't think Deacon would say that the barbed wire was his favourite moment. That was maybe not the way forward. I think for Deacon, I know he was Deacon's least favourite was when he was being challenged about the warrior. I know that. He was very upset about that. And that was quite funny to listen back to. And I was like, oh, he's genuinely really upset about this. And like, no, don't challenge my beliefs. This person's perfect. And I thought that was quite sweet. But as for favourite, I think probably the first the monstery thing that came out from the pit, and he first got his morning star out and had a rage, and he was I think he was just really enjoying himself there and having a great time. He was on a new adventure, so I think for him that was his favourite moment. What about you, Ben? What was yours?
I think one of my sort of favourite elements of it was the story of the shepherd, and then seeing that unpacked into the kind of the reality of the situation, and sort of seeing that like how this story has been distorted and kind of used by this creature, or has the story come from like things from the story, but how that's all tied up together. Like, I just think that was a really cool kind of device and sort of structure for putting the whole thing together.
It was so clever, wasn't it? It was great to hear, because you were kind of like, how does this link? Because it obviously does. Yeah, that was just wicked.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then when you started sort of, seeing the shepherds like turning up and his flock of creatures, things such as they are, like, amazing. And did Thorn have a favourite moment? I mean, it was having a great time.
It's hard to pick a favourite moment when you're heading to death.
Deacon's quite special in being able to enjoy things even when they're not positive, particularly. So might just be him.
But there was a real sense of, like, I think what was was nice was that real sort of genuine sense of camaraderie that formed after that first incident with that horrendously monster thing climbing up the cliff, where they all had that sort of genuine moment, I think, of like, right, we might not all be on the same page with lots of things here. People clearly have secrets. As it turns out, Eloise has got a whole lot of secrets going on, but also, Thorn and everyone else, like, there's stuff going on, but there is this group that is going to stick together as much as they can, and genuinely did then try and help each other through the situation as best they can. So I think that for Thorn would probably be the moment, such as it is. David?
I feel like a dare ask David. What are you all squirming?
Yeah. There are a few moments. There was in episode 3, the the moment when you all kind of stepped out of character and went, whoa, how does this miniseries tie to the larger campaign? Can we just have a brief moment here to, like, panic as players as opposed to characters? That's fun. But no, I think the best moment for me, and like when I was writing the music for all of it, I listened to it so many times because I was like, I'm just enjoying this so much, is when Gail, Vicky's character, just decided not to tell anybody about the weird elf creature person on the side.
Yeah.
And like, just the tension, the pure tension from that moment. It's that the audience knows something, but none of the characters in the situation do.
It was good.
Like, not only in like writing the music for it and obviously like allowing the audience, the actual listeners, to have that, but at the table, everybody's having to be both of those things at once.
Yeah.
The players know what's going on, but the characters do not. And that whole tense situation that followed, like up until the creature attacked, was so juicy. It was so juicy. So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Really
in one person knowing something and not sharing it.
Yeah. I love that decision
I know.
that Vicky made, just to be like, yep, okay.
Yep. Do you tell anyone? No.
It was made out of this idea of, I don't know, sort of almost like a flippancy. Vicky'd have to explain it better, but it just kind of was no, trying to be a bit kind of cool about it. And actually, it's the best thing she could have done, because if she hadn't told us all, we probably would have been all really quickly. So it's like...
I sent Rosie over there and she got it in the face, but if any one of you had gone over there, it would have been your character.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. Craziness.
We might not have made it beyond the start of episode 2.
There were lots of jokes about it. Everyone dying in episode 2.
Yeah.
Could have happened.
Could have happened. Could have happened.
Goodness.
For me, the shepherd smashing his face into the door was such a weird, creepy moment. And another favourite moment, I say favourite, I don't know if I should call it that, but I just think the way that David described it, the barbed wire room, just so visual and terrifying, and really just one of those things that evokes horror. It was really, really like gory and when that barbed wire would get to the end, it would just tear people apart. So gross. But really great and really fun. I've got to say, personally, I had so much fun with Gary. I didn't know what was going to be my favourite part as him. I'm torn. Okay, it's either Mopsy's heroic death in defense of Gary. That was a real beautiful moment. And if Gary hadn't died, we could have resummoned Mopsy. But I'd have to also say Gary's death was horrific and I loved it. I was getting geared up from like episode 2 to die. And so as long as he ended up living, I was really impressed. And then it was a glorious, horrible, icky way to die, which is exactly what you want from a horror special. But overall, I loved it. It was such an atmospheric miniseries to record. I love immersive theatre, and it was absolutely immersive theatre of the mind. It was a wonderful experience, and I'm so proud of the whole team for what they created on this miniseries. Pippa did a fantastic job on the edit. David has brought the music together, and of course the whole cast was so invested in what we were doing. It just a scary, spooky, gross wonder, and I loved it.
Amazing. I mean, David, I also want to unravel everything that's going on now that there's another founder, but maybe that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah. I ain't saying anything about that.
Well, on that note, then, I think we will call it a night. Thank you so much, Sarah and David.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you so much for listening to the entire 4-episode Deacon mini-series. And maybe it's not the last of Deacon. Who knows? Now that he did survive, maybe.
Just might not be quite so exhausted next time you see him. You never know. It might be worse.
Oh dear, yeah, I mean, he has gone off with the shepherd, so, and he can't move. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah! It'll still be
David,
positive.
is it fine?
We'll find out.
Sure, yes.
Right, let's do a group anon for now to leave it there, shall we? Anon for now!